Om, dear fellow member of Vasudev Kutum, dear fellow wave on the ocean of pure consciousness. Today we shall embark on a 10th discourse in this early sadhana, memories of early sadhana series, memories of the GANESHPURI ASHRAM and its residents. Prime among them for me was Swami Madhavananda, in those days Murli. Swami Madhavananda went on to be one of the major saints of SIDDHA, but in those days he was a sadhak. But being a sadhak, it was in about 2 years, being in the GANESHPURI ashram for 2 years, in 2 years he went from probably Pade Mukta to a fully realized saint. And I was there at a ringside seat to that last part of his sadhana, and he moved from Rupe Mukta to Rupatite Mukta. These are terms which mean from... Now, it is interesting, in Siddha Yoga we must understand the process of self-realization to some extent. There are 4 plateaus, spiritual consciousness plateaus on the way to complete realization. One starts off in the Guru Gita. In the Guru Gita it is known as, in Sanskrit the terms are used are Pinde Mukta, Pade Mukta, Rupe Mukta, Rupatite Mukta. Now, these are all states of freedom. Mukta, that's why we get the word Mukta. These are states of freedom, but they start off with the initial Shaktipat. When people receive grace from the Guru, it's known as they have reached the state of Pinde Mukta. That means they have started on the path, but just about. They have been awakened. They have realized there's something beyond normal human consciousness. There is a supernatural seed that has been sown, which results in them having supernatural experiences. And interesting, in Buddhism, it has a more evocative word to use for it. They call it a stream enterer. Where people who have just received Shaktipat, who received the grace which radiates naturally from the body of the Guru, is known as a stream enterer. So that's known as Pinde Mukta. So everybody starts off as a stream enterer. So Swami Madhavananda Murli became a stream enterer when he met Baba in Delhi in 1973, probably Mahashivratri time 1973, during the month that Baba spent in Delhi during those days. He received Shaktipat. That happens during February, March 73. By December 73, he landed up in Ganeshpuri. That means he probably had grown to the next stage, which is known as Pade Mukta, when the mind stops. The thoughts, Baba used to describe it like a spinning, the mind is like a spinning top. But once you receive Shaktipat and once you start taking the name and keeping silent, then slowly all the thoughts in your mind, all that tape recorder gets cleared of all impressions. And then the mind stops. And then one becomes very, very acutely one-pointed in sadhana. One realizes the value of sadhana. One realizes there's a huge distance to go. One realizes there's a darkness inside, but that the flashes of light come when we close our eyes in meditation. So one becomes Pade Mukta. In Buddhism, that's known as once returner. You return to, every time you have a meal, you return to the world. So you are once returned. In Buddhism, you have only one meal if you are a sadhak. So they call it a once returner. You return to the world once in the day. Every day, you start off with an empty stomach, and so you are in a very high state of consciousness. But once you have a meal, you become a once returner. You return to the world. Now, that in our world, it's Pade Mukta, and it's a state when you are very discriminative. You want urgently to know more. You have become the 2 elements necessary for growth in Siddha Yoga, in any yoga, is mumuksha, known as mumuksha, desire for God realization. You certainly develop an urgent desire for God realization. And vairag, you will become detached from the everyday world. You become detached from your normal life. And at the same time acquire this desire for hunger for self-realization. So obviously Murli acquired this hunger and came to Delhi, came to see Baba in Ganeshpuri by December 73. And from December 73 to the time he got realized in towards the end of the year 1975, when I was sitting across the same table doing sadhana in GANESHPURI, and took about 2 years. That means he was there all of 73, all of 74, all of 75. Towards the end of 75, he was fully realized. That meant that he had gone from a standing start to the end of full realization in 3 years, from the moment of Shaktipat, and 2 years from entering the Ganeshpuri ashram for the first time. Now I was there luckily to see that last bit, 3 months stay from August, September 75 to December 75. Sometime along those 3 months he was fully realized. I arrived for my on Saturday morning seva one morning at the accounts room, I would call it, which was really Madhavananda room, because it contained his desk and his small bed on one end of the room, a small room, and that was the only accounts table that the ashram had in those days. And he used to sit on one side of the table, and I used to sit on the other side of the table. He was looking after the normal accounts of the ashram, the day-to-day, what you know is the nominal ledger, the cash book and the nominal ledger, which accounts are kept for any organization. While I was doing the very specialized construction accounts, a lot of new buildings were coming up in the ashram. There was a new foreigners building in those days. We call it it was a cement shell of a building in those days. There was a library block which was coming up. It was going to house the library of the ashram. Those were the two main buildings which were coming up at that time, and a lot of other repairs were going on here and there. And all that needed, legally, if you're a trust, you need to keep construction accounts. So I was roped in to start the construction accounts for that, for the organization, for the PEETH, for that particular. So I was working closely with Sirish Bhai, who was the secretary of the trust, ashram trust, and looked after all accounting matters and legal matters for the ashram. And so I arrived one Saturday morning, in the morning, after Guru Gita, after Seva time, and I found Venkappa, who was really, remember, Baba was nowhere to be seen. Baba was not to be seen by me for 2 years, until he came back in 76. So the person left in charge of the ashram was someone called Venkappa, who was Baba's number 2, who was, in fact, when Bhagwan Nityanand donated those 3 rooms to Muktanand, he started the ashram. He sent along with him, one of the gifts he gave Muktanand was a devotee, Venkappa. So Venkappa was came with the ashram, came with the 3 rooms, which was the foundation, the core of the ashram, how the ashram started. And so he was Baba's helper right from the start. And he had achieved he had become a very advanced seeker by the time I knew him in 75. Over those, seva is so important. You don't have to be a seeker. In that, if you are living in the house of the Guru, if you are living in the presence of the Guru and the divine energy, that lake of divine energy, and you are involved only in seva, as Venkappa was, he was. That is quite enough. You don't need to do anything else, and over time you will rise. You will become purer and purer until you become a saint. And that's what happened to Venkappa. He was on his way to sainthood. Again, I think he was Rupe Mukta at that time. He was very advanced, but not quite a saint at that time. And he was picking up Madhavananda. I saw him. Madhavananda was a tall, thin figure, and Venkappa was picking up like he was a child who had done, especially well at his exams. And he was, with great wonderment, he was saying, "You have come. Aap aa gaye." He had overnight. This usually happens at night. Growth usually happens at night, where all the chakras inside Swamiji had opened, and he had achieved complete realization. He had become Rupe Mukta. As I said, the third stage of realization is Rupe Mukta. He's known as never returner. In Buddhism is known as the never returner. And last stage is what Swamiji has achieved, is known as Arhat. In Buddhism is known as Arhat, which is a complete saint. So Swamiji has achieved complete sainthood towards the end of 73, within a short rocketry period of 2 years he took to achieve that. Enough for today. Thank you for listening.